The Patres and their descendants, the Patricians, formed the oldest aristocratic class in early Rome and stood at the centre of the political and religious structure of the Roman state. According to Roman tradition, the founder of the city, Romulus, organized the new community on the Palatine Hill by selecting the most respected family leaders to serve in a council. These men were called patres, meaning fathers, and their assembly became the senatus, Senate. The children and descendants of these patres were known as patricii, literally, the sons of the fathers, and patrician status became hereditary, passing through generations as a mark of noble ancestry. Roman tradition usually states that the original number of patres was 100, drawn from the leading families of the early Roman tribes, known as the Ramnes, Tities, and Luceres, which probably represented a mixture of Latin, Sabine, and possibly Etruscan elements in the early population of Rome. During the Roman kingdom, the patres formed the political core of the state and served as advisors and guardians of legitimacy under kings such as Romulus, Numa Pompilius, Tullus Hostilius, and Ancus Marcius. When a king died, the patres appointed an official called the interrex who governed temporarily until a new king was chosen, demonstrating that sovereignty ultimately rested in the authority of the patres. Although the popular assembly known as the Comitia Curiata formally confirmed the king, the selection and nomination of candidates remained largely under patrician control. The religious structure of early Rome was also closely connected to patrician families, and several major priesthoods were originally restricted to patricians, including the Flamines Maiores, the Rex Sacrorum, and important positions within the Pontifical College, ensuring that sacred authority remained in aristocratic hands. Patricians held not only political power but also economic and legal privileges. Large landed estates were concentrated in patrician hands, and much of the public land known as ager publicus was effectively controlled by aristocratic families. Among the most prominent patrician gentes were the Cornelii, Fabii, Valeri, Claudii, Julii, Emilii, Manlii, and Horatii, families that dominated the highest magistracies of the early republic, including the consulship and dictatorship. The near destruction of the gens Fabia during the war against Veii in the 5th century BC illustrates the intense military and political role played by patrician families. The Sabine noble Appius Claudius Sabinus led the gens Claudia into Rome, where it soon became one of the most influential patrician houses in Roman history. Patrician status carried important religious and legal privileges. In early Rome, patricians alone possessed the ius auspiciorum, the right to interpret divine signs and determine the will of the gods on behalf of the state, which gave them decisive influence over political decisions. The earliest consuls and senior magistrates were chosen exclusively from the patrician class, leaving the plebeians without political representation for generations. Patricians also monopolized legal knowledge, since early Roman law existed largely as unwritten tradition preserved by patrician priests, and this control over legal interpretation reinforced aristocratic dominance. From the 5th to the 4th centuries BC, prolonged political conflict developed between patricians and plebeians, in what later historians called the struggle of the orders. The first major plebeian protest occurred in 494 BC with the Secessio Plebis, when plebeians withdrew from the city and forced the patricians to accept the office of the tribuni plebis, representatives who defended plebeian interests. The Lex Canuleia of 445 BC allowed marriage between patricians and plebeians, breaking the strict hereditary isolation of patrician families. A decisive turning point came with the Lex Licinia Sextia of 367 BC, which required that at least one consul must be a plebeian, effectively ending the patrician monopoly on political power. In the later Republic, the patricians lost most of their exclusive privileges, but retained their prestige as ancient noble families within the broader aristocratic class, known as the nobilitas. The distinction between patrician and plebeian gradually became more symbolic than political, and plebeians, such as Marcus Tullius Cicero, could rise to the consulship despite lacking patrician ancestry. Some families were even elevated into the patrician order by political decision. Gaius Julius Caesar, for example, enrolled several families into the patriciate in order to preserve the traditional aristocratic structure. During the Roman Empire, the title of patrician became increasingly honorary, and emperors such as Augustus granted patrician rank to selected individuals.